We had a great senior assembly this morning with our presenter. I can tell you it's one of those powerful messages that I have heard in my 15 years of education. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our superintendent, Mr. Schreier, who is then going to introduce our special speaker this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor that you're all here today. Thank you for being here and representing this school district and your community in the exemplary manner that you do. You know, throughout your high school career, and when many of you go into college or you go into work, there will be moments in your life that can be life-changing. There are moments when you can sit and listen to something or be a part of something that you can soak up knowledge and information that can change your life for the positive. That's what we have today. Dave Roever is with us from Fort Worth, Texas. He is a Vietnam veteran who was injured in Vietnam, and you will hear that story today. He will speak to you about courage, about honor, about patriotism, and about making the right choices. He is the most dynamic speaker that I have seen in 24 years of education. Students, put your hands together for Dave Roever.
Thank you, Dan. All right. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
It is a joy to be with you. Thank you for the kind introduction. Wow. I got a lot to live up to. I am thrilled to be here. I want to first, right off the top, give you a little compliment. I speak in schools constantly, and I've addressed over 7 million students in my career. So I have a little experience, and to back up what I'm about to say. In this assembly and the one prior with the seniors, the principal stood up and did not have to ask for your attention. You instantly gave that. I'm just not used to that. You're a classy bunch. Some of you are weird to look at with all that stuff, but you're pretty classy. I'm happy to be here. You're looking me over and I'm looking you over, and you're wondering what happened to me, and I was wondering how you were doing. Big game tonight. I'm excited. I get to go to it. I'm really looking forward to it, and looking forward to the ROTC presentation. That's going to be classy. I love that. But tonight, I hope you guys win that game. But if you don't, here's what you always win. Win or lose on the field, you win in your heart when you give it your best. And that's what if you do that, everything comes out right. So football team, I'm pulling for you. I played football when I was in school. 9th grade, one down. It hurt. I quit, joined the band, and watched other kids get hurt. Yeah, boy. But one of the most common asked questions to me is, how old am I? Well, I'm 69 years old, going on 40. Hollywood says 40 is a new 20, so I'm 19 according to Common Core math. But these are very good days in my life. I'm working more now, traveling more, doing more now than I have in my entire career. And my career began actually when I was injured in Vietnam. And from that day, after I recovered enough to be able to sneak out of the hospital, which I did, I snuck out every weekend and I'd speak. And then sometimes during the school year, I'd speak in schools. I'd sneak out and go speak and come back. And then they'd write me up AWOL, because I was still on active duty, even though I was devastated physically and I could never function again as a military man. But boy, I used to scare kids. Oh gosh, you wouldn't believe. Little kids would come up, look at me, and they'd scream, run into stuff. And sometimes they wouldn't run, they'd just stand there and pee all over themselves, you know. It didn't help, and I'd go, I shouldn't do that. You know, a little snot. But today, I've had over 50 surgeries, and matter of fact, I had surgery last week and the week before that, and I'm getting better every day. I feel great. I'm in better health than I've been in 30 years. So if it says anything to you, it's this. Yeah, I got hurt, but I'm getting better. And every day I get better. Every day is a good day. And if I can make it, you can make it. I want to talk to you about a lot of things, and I will use my own life experience for examples and illustration, but it's not about me. It's really about you today. I want you to be able to put yourself into my shoes as often as you can and try to imagine what you would do in the same situation. And you don't have to go to Vietnam or to Afghanistan or Iraq to get hurt. Some of you have been hurt worse than me. A little 15-year-old girl stopped me after an assembly. And by the way, if I sit down occasionally, I get every night I get a back cramp after a back surgery. So that won't bother you, will it? If you don't mind if I sit down. A little 15-year-old girl came to me after an assembly and she said, I got to talk to you alone. I said, well, I don't talk to girls alone. You get your counselor and we'll go talk. And we did. And as I was starting to sit down, I wasn't quite seated yet. She just blurted it out. My stepfather raped me and I'm going to kill him. I've learned the difference between a threat and a promise. I can tell the difference. This was no threat. This little girl had it. She had been hurt. And I said, before you say another word, because this is a federal property, this is funded by federal funds, if you make that statement and you sincerely mean it, it has to be reported. You can't say that and then let it go. And the counselor verified every word she said, and the man was arrested and put in prison where he remains today, where he belongs. And I hope they throw away the key. That little girl looked at me and she told me her story. And I'm a man, don't want to cry. Couldn't help it. Tears came to my eyes. And she reached across her desk and she dried the tear off my face. And she said, nobody's ever cried for me. And at that point, I broke every cardinal rule of counseling. You don't touch a client, you don't touch a girl, you don't touch a teenager. I threw my arms around her, boo-hooed and snotted all over her sleeve. She's patting me on the back saying, it's okay, mister, you'll be fine. We have a counselor, you know. What I'm trying to tell you is some of you will identify better with me for this reason. You have scars on the inside that look like mine on the outside. Some of you feel ugly because you've been hurt. Some of you feel damaged, like you ever go to the grocery store, you folks, and there's a shopping cart with all the canned goods in there. Labels are missing, but the cans are crushed and they're 50 cents a can. It's called damaged goods. Some of you think you're that way. Let me tell you something. You are a masterpiece. There's only one of you in the universe, and you are special. And that's not talk. That's reality. There's only one. And it's an army slogan, but it's a good one. Be all you can be. Don't ever settle. You know what that means? Get by. It bothers me when people say, well, it's okay. Okay means to me it's not good enough. Don't ever be okay. Go the extra mile to be the best you can be. I believe your football team is going to do that tonight. They're going to go the extra mile. They're going to push for the extra yard. They're going to fight for the extra touchdown. Whatever it takes, be the best you can be in everything you do. And I grew up that way. I fell in love, actually, whenever I was a teenager. I fell in love with my junior high school sweetheart. I asked her to marry me when I was 16. She slapped me when I was 16. She was 13. She said, this is Kentucky and I'm not your first cousin. But she said to me, if you love me, and if's a wonderful word. If means the door of opportunity is still open. If you love me, you'll wait for me. I said, I'll pick you up at 10. I knew what she meant. I was a typical boy, possessed with the urge to merge, and she was not so possessed. And she cooled my jets real quick. If you love me, you'll wait for me. So I know it's a big joke among kids today, but I don't care. I'm just telling you the truth. When we got married, we were both virgin and proud of it. You can clap, I'll wait. Oh, thank you. But we got married when she graduated from high school. We waited till she graduated, and I love her. She was my first wife. I got to tell you something. Things that mean the most to us sometimes are taken away from us. And I thought she could never love me after I was injured. I kissed her goodbye at the airport, and I remember the salt of her tears. When I kissed her lips, I can taste that salt today, it seems like. And I turned to walk away, and she called my name, Davy. And if she had said David, I'd have gone to the corner and stood there because I know she's about to send me there. But she said Davy, and when she says Davy, I melt. I'm wasted. Davy, and I stopped, and proud of myself for not weeping when I walked away to go to war. I turned around and looked at her and I said, "What?" And she asked me this question: "Are you coming back?" I was with an organization in the United States Navy called Special Warfare Command. I was a forward gunner on a little river boat. We were called river rats. I stood between two 50 caliber machine guns in the front of that boat. I was the first into battle every time the boat went up the river. I was the first to be hit if anybody's going to be hit. They want to take out the big guns first. Our survival rate was the lowest. We had the highest KIA, killed in action. We had the highest KIA of anybody in the military during the war in Vietnam per capita. We were a very small group, and most of them were injured and killed. For me to say to her, "Oh, it's okay," I would have been lying. But I said to her, "I'll be back." And then I tacked on this "without a scar." Where in the world did that come from? Why didn't I just say it? "I'll be back." Then I could be governor of California. No, I had to go put that scar thing in there. And it was like in the back of my mind, a little light came on. I'm leaving one way. I'll never come back the same as I left. And I knew it in my heart. I kissed her goodbye again and got on the plane and went to Vietnam. I was there for 8 months. I was supposed to have been there 13 months. But in 8 months, I was injured 2 times with 1 day in between. The first time was relatively minor compared to the second. But on the 23rd of July I was hit, and on the 26th they put me back on the river, and that time was a permanent injury that I would never get over. 1969 is the year. I know, you're thinking, ooh, right after the War of 1812. It sounds like a long time ago to you. It wasn't to me. And the fact that I'm still going through surgery after surgery, Humpty Dumpty had a big fall, and all the king's horses and the king's men are trying to put me back together again. They'll never finish. I have a lot of spare parts. I had a bad jump. I work for, back up a little bit. I work for the Department of Defense today as a contractor. I'm a resiliency coach, is literally my title, with the Comprehensive Soldier Fitness Program. And I travel with the troops all over the world, wherever they go: Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, UAE, Afghanistan, Iraq, Kosovo, Bosnia. That's in the Middle East and Europe. And then into Asia, I go all over. I'm headed to Korea, and I'll be up on the DMZ of North Korea very soon with our troops under more pressure than they've ever been under since the 50s when the war was there. The world's sitting on a powder keg, and you know it. And it's very dislodging. I don't want it to ever become discouraging to you. I don't want you to lose hope, because things in the world scene are very difficult right now. Don't ever lose hope. Well, they don't send me there because I'm good looking, although that doesn't hurt that I am. They don't send me because of my mighty military strength. I have to sit down to speak sometimes. They don't send me for my academic accolades. I was in the top 10% of the lower 1/3 of my class. And I figured out 5 out of 4 people don't get fractions either. You got it. Pretty good for juniors. So what I'm trying to tell you is, I kissed her goodbye and went to war. And I had an inkling. I knew I was going to get hurt. And in the movie Apocalypse Now, if you ever saw that movie, you shouldn't have. It's rated R and it's vulgar. But I love the movie because of the equipment that was used. Francis Ford Coppola used the right equipment in trying to depict that part of the war. A more modern movie is called Acts of Valor. And in that movie, they used our boats too. And it's, so if you saw any of that, you know what I'm talking about. A little fiberglass boat, 4 people on board. And then they put the Navy SEALs on. I was trained by SEAL Team 1 in California and served in Vietnam with SEAL Team 1, but I was not a SEAL. I was a brown water, black beret, a tiny little organization of very few guys involved in very dangerous work. And I'll be honest with you. I would never want to get hurt. I would never want anybody else to get hurt. But having been injured, I'm proud of my scars and stripes. Does that make any sense? You ROTC kids, obviously it's not a recruitment. It's a program that really teaches a lot of character and builds into you great stuff. But I do want to tell you something about the military, which you likely would never serve unless you choose that. I want you to understand something. The military built into me something that I did not have before. My dad taught me character. He taught me integrity. He taught me discipline. But what he could not teach, the military taught me in a way that only the military could teach me, that you can do above and beyond what you think. I never had run. I didn't think running was, it's like, why hurt yourself? Why run when you can walk? Why walk when you can sit? Why sit when you can lay down? You know, I'm just not that physically oriented. But whenever I ran my first 8 miles, I didn't realize I could do that. I swam my first 15 miles. I didn't think I could do that. And I started breaking barriers and limitations that I put on myself. And that's one of the most dangerous things you'll ever do to yourself, is to think you can't when you really can, but you've never been pushed to try. And I'm going to show you some examples of that. Because you limit yourself more than anybody else can limit you. And one of the great problems of your generation that you have to face is social media. You believe everything you see. Don't buy into it. And I want to talk to you a minute about this bullying stuff that goes on. Young people, please listen to me. It was tough enough for me to believe in myself, but when other people didn't believe in me, it would drag me down. Now you have the social media. There's one thing you've got an advantage on. You have an off button on that computer. For God's sake, push the off button every now and then. When you see stuff or somebody's giving you a hard time on that, you don't have to hear it, you don't have to see it. Push the off button. Don't believe the lies that bullies will give. And you football players need to hear me too, because you're rough, tough, take no crap off nobody kind of guys. And I appreciate that. You ought to be rough, tough, and on that field you're something else. But don't ever give the little guy a hard time. He wears those thick glasses and he's the nerd of the school. You better treat him nice. One day he'll be signing the check that pays you for your work on the field, because he'll own the team you play for. Think twice about what I'm saying. Treat each other with respect and honor. And I know the gender rule today is very much, and it's very true, no difference between male or female when it comes to being honorable and being treated fairly. A woman has every right as any man, absolutely. But I was raised to open the door for a lady. I know some people think it's wrong. I'm going to still open the door for that lady. And it's not just for that lady. But somewhere, some little boy is going to see me open that door and show respect to that woman. Why is that important? Because one day he'll grow up and he'll be a husband. And if he grew up to understand you respect a woman, maybe he won't hit her and beat her. And I'm telling you, the spousal abuse has got to stop. The violence in the home has to quit. And you're the generation to make it happen. Give yourself a hand if you agree with me. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. So I grew up in a very good home without that kind of stuff. And then I go to war, and now I have this great fear that my injury is going to cost me my marriage. And it was a huge fear, and well-founded, because most marriages don't make it through what I went through. On July 26, 1969, I was holding a white phosphorus hand grenade. It burns at 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's twice the heat necessary to melt the engine out of your car. I pulled the pin, I drew back. I didn't know I was in the crosshairs of a sniper. And he shot at my head, I guess, but he missed. And the bullet went through the back of my hand, and it detonated the grenade right here, inches from my right ear. And in 1 second, say 1 second. That's how long it takes to change your life. Faster than you can say it. In 1 second, my life changed. I went from 190 pounds of perfect health, strong, in peak health condition, to 130 pounds that night whenever they weighed they actually weigh the whole bed, and then they extract the weight of the bed. I went from 190 pounds to 130 pounds in one day. That's the flesh that was blown off me. Blew my face off, blew my hair off, blew my ear off. I looked down, I could see my heart beating. My face was on my boots. I was blind in my right eye, deaf in my right ear for obvious reasons. Got my hair back. I bought it. It was on sale, made in China. And that little sucker over there is wondering why he's bald. I don't mind the hairpiece. I just hate chasing it across school parking lots on windy Mondays. And I've done it too. One time a dog got to it quicker than me and brought it to me. There were others there. He could have taken it, brought it to me. Nice dog. Wasn't even my dog. Went blind in my eye. I had my vision back, but it was a long time coming and blew my ear off. So everything except what's under my hand was blown off to bone or gone. And to put it all back together was a huge, I mean, they took all the skin off my legs to put my, they told me, we found skin that matches your face perfectly. Then they told me where they found it. I said, not. They said, why not? I said, because people won't know if I'm coming or going. If you didn't get it, your principal will explain that later in counseling. I'm not going to take it off there and put it on my face. What would that say? Kiss my face. She just got it. I like that. When that grenade blew, I didn't feel a thing. No pain. I had zero pain to start with. And I jumped off the boat into the water, but phosphorus burns in water, so I was burning in the water. You can't extinguish it, it burns itself out. When I surfaced, I inhaled and I pulled that fire right down in my larynx and it set my mouth on fire. Still no pain. I swam across the river and I was on my knees on the bank of the river and I looked at the damage. I fell over backwards, and at that moment, everybody thought I died. And I was listed KIA, killed in action, and it went up my chain of command to the Pentagon that I was killed. 8 months later, they corrected my pay record because in the hospital they realized I'm not dead. That's interesting. And so they corrected my pay record, but 34 years later, they corrected my service record out of St. Louis to show that I wasn't dead. I could have told them if they'd asked me, but they didn't ask. Whenever the helicopter landed to pick me up, it's called a dust-off, and they threw the stretcher down and rolled me on the stretcher. While I was still burning, the stretcher caught fire. When they picked me up and started running, I fell through the stretcher and landed on my head. Have you ever had one of those days? Nothing goes right. They rolled me up in wet blankets, and I am now smoking out both ends of that blanket, I'm sure, in the helicopter. And away we go. The medic thinks I'm dead because he's filling out paperwork. Again, no pain, but that's when the pain started. And when the shock wore off, guys and gals, I've never known anything like it, and I don't like to think about it because I don't want to remember. It's like a dog sleeping. Don't walk up and kick it, right? That thing will bite you, and I don't want to be bitten by the memory of what it felt like. But I can tell you this, it was bad enough that I just yelled one word. I said, medic! And when I did, he almost jumped out of that helicopter, scared him. The pilot lost control. We're dropping like a rock, and I thought, good grief, we're going to crash, and I'm going to be the only survivor. They got me to Saigon and then to Japan. Not in the helicopter. They flew me to Saigon in helicopter and then put me on a big hospital jet and flew me to Japan. And I did something really stupid. I asked for a mirror, and they did something really stupid. They brought it, and they held it over my face, and I looked up with one eye I could see, and what I saw, that's when I knew my marriage was over. There's no teenage girl on the face of the earth going to love me. I mean, 13 when I fell in love with her, you know. Oh, but she was advanced. She's 13, but she had the body of a 14-year-old. I'm telling you, boy. So I knew, you know what, if I don't have her, I don't want to live anyway. And I did something really, really bad. And you know what's coming, don't you? I decided I'd take my life. If I can't live with Brenda, I don't want to live. It's like that song, I think it may be Foreigner or Boston. When I said that I loved you, I meant that I loved you forever. So I pulled the tube out. I decided I'd just stop, end it all right here, get me out of her misery. And I pulled the tube and I laid my head back and I waited to die. And I got hungry. It's the wrong tube. I pulled out lunch. You can die that way, but it's going to take a while. If you smell a pizza, you're plugging that tube back in. I couldn't plug it back in, but I realized I'm not dying. And I got to tell you today, I'm so glad I pulled the wrong tube. Suicide's not our solution, is it? We know that. But that social media can drive you to the brink. Problems in your home, parents divorce, lose a parent, it can drive you to the brink. I want you to look at me. I want you to look at me. Yeah, I've been to hell and back. But I want you to look at me and I want you to understand something. I'm happy. Life is good. There's no reason to cut it short because you have a problem today. Someone said it, and I don't know who to give credit, because if it's not me and it's this good, that someone ought to be credited. I just don't know who. Never treat a temporary problem with a permanent solution. Suicide's dangerous. Second thought will kill you. Everybody thinks of it. You know, I remember as a little boy, you know, I hold my breath till I die and show my parents, you know, come on. Don't give up. And I hope you're listening. So they sent me to America from Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. I was there for 1 year and 2 months. I was in there with a kid that, and I didn't mention this in the first assembly, but I'd like to share it with you. He was riding a motorcycle and he'd been drinking, and driving drunk on a motorcycle is even more stupid than driving drunk in a four-wheel vehicle, which is stupid to the max. And he lost his leg. Which, by the way, I'm going to tell you something. On May the 14th, 1988, a man named Larry Mahoney was driving down I-70, over twice the legal drinking limit. And he went across the median and hit a school bus head on. These kids had just been here at Kings Island. 27 of them burned to death that day. Did you hear me? 27 kids died on that bus that day, including the bus driver. There's actually 24 children, they're your age, teenagers, 24, and then 3 adults. The bus driver and 2 sponsors were on there. One woman and both her daughters burned to death. The entire family of Staff Sergeant Lee Williams, stationed over at Fort Knox. He lost his whole family to a drunk driver. You got a football game tonight, and you've got a prom coming up. And I got nothing to lose but wait. So I'm going to just be honest with you, okay? Stay off the booze tonight. Stay off it tomorrow. Look, kid, I love you enough to come here and be unpopular. But you start messing with drugs and alcohol in your celebration of a great, and have a lot of fun, but do it drug-free and alcohol-free. And don't get in a car with someone. If you smell that alcohol, do not get in that car, unless it's to grab the keys and throw them as far as you can into the water. Stay sober. Do I have some support in this crowd? Thanks, guys. Thank you. I did the funeral for those 27 kids, and it changed my life forever. I don't want to do any more funerals for that many kids, for any kid. They got me to America, Brooke Army Medical Center, and they put me in the ICU, which I didn't know what that was. I'd never been in a hospital. ICU. And then I found out what it was when they let me stand for the first time 4 months later. They put this robe on you, on me. It didn't come together in the back. That's why they call it the ICU. See, I didn't go to medical school, and I learned that. I'm not stupid. And they let visitors come in. And a woman came in to see the guy in the bed next to my bed. He was 100% third degree. You know what that means? No skin left on his body. I was in the 50 percentile, but I had a serious head injury. And TBI, they call it traumatic brain injury. And I wasn't expected to live. The room had 13 of us in it. Every one of them died but me. And no one made it. He was the first to go. He was in that room, laid there, conscious, no skin on his body. And his wife walked up, took off her wedding ring, threw it on the bed. She said, "You're embarrassing. I couldn't walk down the street with you." Turned around, walked right back out the door. I laid there saying, "Oh my God, which tube do I pull? How do I finish this before she comes in? Because I know it's over." And she walked in. More beautiful than I ever remembered. Ripe old age of 19 now. She bent down and kissed what was left of my face, looked me in my good eye, and she said, "I just want you to know, I really love you. Welcome home, Davy." And when she says, Davy, I said, baby, I'm sorry. I can't ever look good for you again. She said, Davy, you never were good looking. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall tick thee off. Oh my gosh. She could actually have humor, and she made me laugh, and she made me happy. And 49 years later, we're still together. What do you think of that? There you are. Still going. And I love her. She's the best friend in the whole world to me. And we've traveled the world together. We've done so many things. But she gave me 2 wonderful children, and they gave me 4 wonderful grandchildren. And my little granddaughter, 5.5 years old, blonde hair, blue-eyed little angel, crawled up in my lap, squeezed my shot-up, burned, mutilated face. And she said, Papa, which in Texas, that means mighty man of war, holy man of God. Just thought I'd tell you. Papa, I said, what little angel? And she sang to me, 5.5-year-old, holding my face. You are so beautiful to me. Can't you see? I couldn't see. I was crying and blowing snot bubbles. I don't need hairspray when the grandkids are there. You'll figure it out. All I can tell you is this. I'm glad I pulled the wrong tube. Don't give up. There's children and grandchildren, doctors and lawyers and nurses and whatever that will come along and change humanity for the better. They'll spring forth from your life. Give them a chance. Don't give up. Don't quit. And when it hurts the most, that's when you learn the most. Out of our sorrow, out of our suffering sometimes. And I'm not an advocate for suffering. Good grief. I don't need you to go stand in front of a bus so you got a story you can share. Well, the bus runs over you. No, I'm just saying, when you get hurt, don't think it's the end of the world. It will get better. It always does. You just have to give it time. And so, by the way, one day I was going back to Radcliffe, Kentucky, where the children were out of that were killed on that bus. And it was a year later, and ABC television brought all their TV cameras, and they were following me through the school. The school wanted me to do a 1-year commemoration. The desks were still empty where those children, 27 empty desks in that school. Nobody wanted to sit in them. Not out of hocus pocus, but out of honor and respect. And the fact that it's hard to let go of someone you love. And on my way to the school, you have to go right by the cemetery. How's that for a wake-up call every day you go to school? You have to drive by the cemetery to get to Radcliffe High. And I looked out, and there was Staff Sergeant Lee Williams, whose wife and 2 girls, his whole family, killed by that drunk driver. He was out there in the cemetery. I didn't want to interrupt him, but I was early, and I wanted to maybe have coffee with him at McDonald's. So I beeped the horn, and I said, hey, Lee, meet me at McDonald's. About 20 minutes later, he shows up. I said, how you doing? I said, I see that a year's passed and the grief is still strong. I said, are you doing okay? He said, oh, it's not what you think. He said, I'm starting to deal with it. I said, yeah, but the flowers at the cemetery. He said, yeah, but it's not what you think. I said, well, what is it? He said, well, today was Christy's birthday. That's his oldest daughter. He said, today she turned 16. And I told her last year when she turned 16, I'd give her a dozen roses. So I went out and left them at the grave because a daddy has to keep his promises to his girl. One drunk. Don't be that drunk. I'm hammering you. I'm hammering you hard. You got a big event coming. Celebrate to the max, but do it right. And so I left the hospital after 1 year and 2 months. And I got a call from Department of Defense on 2 weeks after 9/11. And they said, we want you to go to all of our installations. And they send me all over the world to share my story of my recovery out of the war, not just physical, but the recovery emotionally. And I would like to close by just sharing this with you. I didn't share this in the first assembly, so if you're visiting both of these, you won't get a repeat of that closing. This happened when I arrived in 2006 in Baghdad. I went over by the mortuary to say a few words of encouragement to the young men that were tending to our warriors that come through there constantly during the war to be processed for internment. And we were standing there talking when all the radios went off at once, and that's never good news. Something bad happened. And I heard my name, and the dispatcher said, "Get Mr. Roever to the Green Zone Hospital stat." And immediately I was put into a Humvee, and we raced across from the airport to the Green Zone and weaved our way through and shot in, and they took me to the hospital and run up the steps. And as I walked in, the doctor said, "That room, Mr. Roever, that room." And it pointed, and I took off, and there laid a man burned 100% third degree. He was not going to live. Ripe old age of 19, the average age of the warriors serving our military. They're just slightly older than you as a junior class, 19 years old. I walked over, and he was charred black. They were making 2-inch deep cuts down both arms and legs to let the flesh ooze through the cuts because the skin could not stretch. It was burned. They're trying to relieve pressure. And I went over and I slipped my arm under his head, and I turned his head slightly so I could speak into the hole in the side of his head where his ear had been. And just an ear canal, but deep inside that canal was an eardrum, and he could hear me. And I said to him, "On behalf of a grateful nation, I came to tell you thank you." His body shuddered, and a long, slow breath out 2 holes in the front of his head where his nose had been. And a 19-year-old from Indianapolis, Indiana, gave his life for my country and for me, for you. I just held him a while. I stood there thinking, what does it take to be free? Ladies and gentlemen, we're in this room. There'll be no Taliban hand grenade down this aisle. There won't be an Al-Qaeda truck bomb in your parking lot. Because somebody, we call them U.S. military, we're up all night watching over us to be sure we had a safe day today at school. And I want you to hear me. For our first responders, policemen, firemen, for our military, we have a deep sense of debt. And I will, for the rest of my life, continue to stand for our national anthem because I still believe in us. I know there's a lot of pain, but never, ever take that pain out against the people who give us the right to stand. I love you guys. And my name is Dave Roever, and I approve of this message. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Great kid. Love you.
We have just about 1 minute, but I just want to hit one thing that Mr. Roever talked about. And I think it's very important you guys understand that as you grow, and for anybody, no matter whether you're 10, 12, 30, or 40, life is all about decisions. As he talked about, your entire life can change in 1 second. And we talk about, a lot of times, homecoming weekend, we talk about prom weekend, and we need to make sure that we put in every weekend and every night that you're home and you're outside the school building, that your life can change in 1 second. We have a huge weekend this weekend. We have a great game tonight, a great dance for tomorrow night. Make good decisions. Do not get caught up in the alcohol. Do not get caught up in the drugs. Make good decisions before the dance, after the dance, before the game, after the game. And that's just not just this weekend. But please understand, one decision in 1 second can change everything. And so that's something that you have to start letting sink in and understanding, especially as you get older. Okay? I appreciate your attendance. I appreciate you're attentive to our speaker. As always, it's nice to see that we have respectful model students here at Springboro High School, so I thank you for that. You guys can go ahead and go to your 4th period. Thank you.